Hey Flosstube, how are you? I'm Amy, I'm the Globetrotting Stitcher. I'm really happy to be back with you today. I hope you're all doing well and having a great time with your stitching with no frogs in sight. Wanted to just start off by saying a huge and sincere thank you to all of you. On our last video, we shared that my dad is having another surgery. That's actually happening in the next couple of days. And just the warmth and the kindness and the number of you that came back and sent your well wishes and your prayers and your kind thoughts. I just wanted to tell you how much we appreciated that and how much it uplifted us. This is a really special and kind community, and just your caring and your genuine warmth is very much appreciated. So we will be keeping you posted on how Dad's recovery goes. And but we just wanted to say thank you for that. We've had a rather busy couple of weeks, which kind of seems par for the course for us, but we're doing well here. So we did take a little bit of a break a couple of weeks ago and went to Eastern Washington to visit some good friends of ours who live over that way. And we had a really great visit. We ended up sacrificing a fair bit of our weekend stitching time, but it was totally worth it. And so we really just had a great time with them, as we always do. It was a little bit dicey coming home. Well, that sounds more dramatic than it actually was. But this time of year, so you have to go over 2 mountain passes to get from Western Washington to Eastern Washington. And this time of year, it's kind of unpredictable because spring and late winter, you never know if you're going to have an easy route or not. And so things were dry and clear on the way over there. And when we headed for home, pretty much as soon as we hit the first of the 2 passes, the snow started coming down. Thankfully, Gary grew up having to drive on snow, and so he's very, very good at that, and he got us home with no problems, but I was awfully glad I wasn't the one behind the wheel. I don't like driving in snow. Anyway, all of that to say, we had a really great weekend. And so it was nice just to get away and have a good time. I think one of the other things that's kind of coming up that I'm really looking forward to in the next couple of weeks, one of our regular viewers is, she had contacted me last year because she was kind of coming into our area and she thought it'd be fun to meet up and have some stitchy time. And unfortunately, we couldn't make schedules work. We just had too many conflicts. However, she's coming back into the area, and so in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be meeting up with her and have a chance to get to know her a little bit. And so I'm really looking forward to that. So if she's comfortable with it, hopefully on our next video, I'll be able to share. I don't know if it's our next video. It might be the video after that. We'll have to look at the dates, but if she's comfortable with it, I'm hoping to be able to maybe share some pictures and stories from our time together. But regardless, I'm looking forward to it. I always love meeting up with a stitchy friend, and so I think it's going to be a great time. So before we get into what we've been working on and all of our stitching goodness, I wanted to tell you about something that has happened in our community that I'm excited about, that I think you'll be excited about. I think we've been seeing over the last year or so a lot of folks, a lot of different floss tubers trying their hand at designing and kind of branching out to express their love for cross stitch in not just, doing the cross stitch themselves, but coming up with new ideas and new designs and sharing those with us. And I think it's really fantastic how many people are stepping into that space. And we've got another person who has joined the ranks. So if you've been watching our channel for a while, you may remember that last year I was telling you about James the PH Stitcher. James is from the Philippines, and he stitches a lot of fancy ladies. He stitches a lot of owl forest embroidery as well as full coverage, and he has joined the ranks of those who are stepping into the designing game. So he reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and asked if he could share his first pattern with me. And I said, yes, of course. I'm honored that you would share your pattern with me. So his first release was Cross Stitch Tools. And if you follow him on Instagram or you watch his videos, he is doing a stitch along with that design. So you can see how that's coming along there. But just in the last few days, he's now released his second chart, which is called Birds of Paradise. It's really beautiful. He uses a lot of wonderful bright colors, and I was really so appreciative because he actually sent me a copy of his first chart, Cross Stitch Tools, he did such a great job on it. I really loved it. So If you haven't gone to check out James already, please go check him out. Find him both on Instagram and on his YouTube channel. We'll include links to all of that below. But I wanted to tell you also check out his new charts, and he has them available for sale. They're PDFs. And so I will also include his email address in the description box so you can reach out to him if you like what he's putting together and creating. I would encourage you to support a new designer and purchase a couple of his charts. Well, he's got 2 so far, but take a look at those and maybe pick them up because he's done a fantastic job, and I think we want to encourage our new designers to keep designing. So I think that's it for kind of announcements and updates. So let's get into the stitching. So I have a fully finished object to share with you. This one has been a long time coming. Those of you who are newer viewers will have never have seen this. Some of you may not even remember this if you've been with us a while. But about 1.5 years ago, I finished a design called Honey Fields by Filigram. I stitched this on 32 count Chasescape Lugana by Silkweaver. And I have finally fully finished it after a very long delay. So here is how it turned out. I'm really, really pleased with this. I think it's really pretty. So as you can see, I ordered a custom frame and custom mats cut for it. And I just think it's really, really pretty. I love how the kind of the sky effect of the hand-dyed fabric sets off this design of honeybees and this lovely little beehive here. So this chart, actually, there's a companion piece that matches it. And I knew I was going to stitch it, and it's the same size, so I actually ordered a second set of mats and a frame so I can frame them the exact same way. And I'm planning to stitch the companion piece later this year, probably much later this year. But I was really pleased with how this turned out. I think it's going to be a really nice addition to our summer decor. And so I'm happy to finally have this one done and ready to put up on the wall later this year. So that's Honey Fields by Filigram. Okay. So that's it for finishes. Didn't finish anything else, no other fully finished objects. So let's get into the whips. The first one I have to share with you is my full coverage. I am stitching Rose Trellis in by Heaven and Earth Designs, and I'm stitching that on a piece of 28 count white Lugana 2/1 using a combination of half stitch and tent stitch. So the last time you saw this, I was working my way across the 4th row of pages. I was getting close to that front door area on the front porch, or the main entry of the house. And so I had just about finished stitching the hanging basket that's next to the front door. There's a decorative medallion that's above the front door that was taking shape. And then there's also this kind of beautiful filigree woodwork that kind of frames the front entrance. And I had finished stitching the bit of that is on the left-hand side of the door. This is where this is right now. Whew. So I didn't make quite as much progress as I would have liked, although that's like universally true with everything I stitch. But I am excited with how this is coming along. So this kind of tower section here, there was a little bit left to do in this corner. That is now finished completely. I've started stitching in this like heart trim border that's on this kind of, I don't know if it's a porch or what it is, but started stitching that in and finishing off this bouquet here. I've carried this roof further over, but what you can really see where the real progress is I'm nearly finished stitching in this kind of decorative medallion above. This is now the front door or the front entryway that's starting to show up, and you can see the door showing up here. I've also stitched far enough over here that you can see the other side of the filigree woodwork that's that decorative element above the front entryway. So this one was a lot of fun to work on. I was really enjoying it, and I'm having a great time with it. One thing I did want to mention is I'm continuing to have problems. I think it's it's as straight as I can get it on the board here, but I'm continuing to have some issues with this one as far as the warping that has happened. And I've known for a long time that I was going to need to block it when I was able to wash it. And it probably will require a couple different blocking sessions to actually get this as straight as possible. But it was actually kind of hard to get it to lay relatively straight on the board today. And that might just be because I'm kind of middle of the page and so it's pulling a bit. But I'm a little concerned about it. When you put this many hours into something and that many years, you want it to turn out nice and straight. And I think I'm going to have to send this to a really experienced framer who's worked on full coverage pieces to make sure that when it's ready for framing, it's going to turn out looking good. So keeping my fingers crossed, but yeah. So if those of you who have finished full coverage and had it framed, if you've ever had a problem with kind of warping and having to frame around that, and you've got a framer that you would recommend for that, please let me know, because I definitely want to send this to someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to dealing with that kind of a problem. One other thing I wanted to speak about really briefly before I put this down is we had a question on a video relatively recently about when I talk about that I'm doing this as a combination of half stitch and tent stitch. And I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the person, but they were saying, well, I thought they were the same thing. So they are actually not. And I'm not really great at describing this, but I'll do the best I can. But on the front of your fabric, a half stitch and a tent stitch look exactly the same. What makes them different is the technique that you actually use. And if you look at the back of a piece, you can actually see the difference. So in half stitch, you're coming up at the bottom left of the stitch and going down in the top right. And you're moving from left to right. In tent stitch, you're still coming up in the bottom left, going down in the top right, but you're stitching from right to left. So that it pulls in a different direction with the thread, and it creates a different thread pattern on the back. And the reason why you want to do that, and unfortunately I wasn't doing that, which is why I had the initial warping that has continued to impact this piece. The reason why you want to do that combination, or what I've been told on full coverage, is because half stitch pulls in one direction and then tent stitch pulls in the other direction. And so theoretically, you have a piece that doesn't have a lot of warping. Whereas because of how I started this piece, I'm having problems with warping. So I don't know, we'll see. But hopefully that kind of helps to clarify and explain for the person who had the question about that. All right, the next whip that I wanted to show you is my sampler. So I am working on Blackberry House by Plum Street Samplers. I am stitching this on a piece of 36 count platinum linen by Zweigert, 2/2, using all of the called for flosses. So the last time you saw this, I had made really great progress. I had finished most of the quilt stars that are at the top of the design, and I had started stitching down through the central section there's a big floral arrangement. That's what the design mostly is. And so I had started kind of stitching down that middle column and filling in a few of the little elements. I had also stitched the outline of the bowl that the arrangement sits in. So here's where I am right now. I didn't make a ton of progress. When you see the comparison from where I was to where I am now, you can see I didn't make a ton of progress on this. And that is because the week that I worked on this was the week that we went to visit our friends. So I did take this with me, but I ended up, although I worked on it a little bit, I really wanted to prioritize just time, social time, and enjoying being with them. And so I really didn't put much stitching into this while we were there for the weekend. And weekends are when I get most of my stitching time in. But I'm happy with where I am. So you can see, this up here is page 2. So there's 6 pages in total. Page 2 is completely finished. Page 1 is almost completely finished. So I've completed all the quilt stars. I've started stitching. I've stitched most of this little birdhouse here. I've stitched in more of the berries and carried that down. I've also started stitching on, this is going to be the big, beautiful kind of tropical bird. And then I've started filling in the bowl down here, as well as started on the roof of this little house that's down here. So decent progress, just not a ton of progress. But that's okay. This one is a really enjoyable piece to work on, and I had a great time with it the week that it was up in my rotation. One other thing I want to mention about this, I am doing this as a stitch along with several other stitchers, including Sarah, Stitch Addict on Instagram, as well as Paula, Stitching in High Heels, and then a couple of other folks who don't have floss. Well, actually, Sarah doesn't have a Flosstube channel either, but several other folks are stitching this along with us. And so really enjoying that. Our hashtag is Blackberries for Dad SAL. And I mentioned, part of the reason I mentioned that is because Sarah has also recently worked on this, and she posted her progress on Instagram, and I was like, oh my gosh, girl, you're blowing me out of the water. She made a ton of progress. Her piece looks really great. So if you don't follow Sarah on Instagram, you should, because she's doing a fantastic job with this one, and she stitches a ton of beautiful things. All right. Next, why don't we hear from Gary about what he's been working on? Gary, over to you.
Well, I meant to look at bring this up before I got on camera, but I did not. So let me make a few things here. I have to restart a timer. That's one thing. And then got to find my notes. All right, so the first one that I'm working on is Captain America. And that is designed by Awesome Pattern Studios. It's an Etsy shop, and it's stitched on 16 count Pewter Ada with the called for DMC. Yeah, well, you really just use the called for DMC on this one. Okay, so I can't say that I've got a lot done, and I was hoping to get this done before the end of the month, but the end of the month is Thursday, and I know I'm not going to have enough time this week to finish it. But I did get, if you look at the last one, you can see where I had started adding, there was like a pink color and a blue color and some other stuff. But if you look at it now, you can see that I've actually added purple. There's a little bit of red, and it's all at the bottom there. I'm just filling in the bottom. Most of that is done, but it's very tedious because, you know, some boxes are actually not the color you think they are. It's very easy. It's very easy to mess this one up. As speaking of which, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, where you see where the purple meets up with the gray, that's all wrong. But I just made it look right, and Amy says that makes me a cross stitcher now.
It does.
Okay, well, there you have it. Anyway,
Can I, before you move on, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for those who missed it, Gary's Northeast roots showed when he started introducing this piece, because he said he's stitching it on Pewter Ada.
And you needed to know that.
Yes, they did.
That was a must-have.
Yes.
In the world of halves. Anyway, so that's where Captain America is. I can say this much: it will be done by the end of April 2023, or it's going to be on fire. One or the other. So either way, I'm just kidding about the fire. It'll get done. All right, the next piece I'm working on is it's Human Beings, and this is designed by the Demented Stitcher, which is also an Etsy shop. And then here's my favorite words again. It's stitched on 16 count Rock Salt Ada by Color and Cotton with the called for DMC. Again, there's really no need to change the colors in this one unless you wanted to, but I think it's fine just the way it is. I made some good progress on this. I don't know that I'll be done by the end of April, but I can't see it going past May before this one is finished. If you looked at it the last time, you could see that I'm sorry, something popped in my head about some comments that people made about the height of the eye, and I'll get to that in just a second. Anyway, I finished the eye. I think, where am I now? Yeah, I finished the eye the last time you saw this. And then I started the end, finished the N, and now the G. I've done most of the top part of the G. There's a little bit on the right side that needs to be cross-stitched, but for the most part, the top of it is done. I got to do the bottom, then the S, then there's a trademark, a couple of borders, and a bit more text. And all of the text, actually everything below human beings or beings is black. So it won't be too hard to get that done. So that's where that is. But what people pointed out was that someone said, I hate to tell you this, but the eye seems a bit high. And that's not a reference to, well, you know. Anyway, they said the eye seems to be a little bit higher. Actually, that is how it is in the pattern. I stitched it and I looked and I was like, did I mess this up? And I did not. That is exactly how it is in the pattern. I think it's to have it match up with the top. I can't tell right now because it's all covered with stuff that I'm not moving for now. But yeah, so that actually is exactly where it's supposed to be. So that's where I am on human beings. Like I say, I should probably by the end of May, I'll be done with that, which brings me to my next point. I need to start another piece, and I'm not sure which one to start. I have 3 options, and I thought maybe anybody who was interested could help me out with that choice. One of them is titled Brave Women, and or is it? I don't know. Either way, it'll pop up. It's titled Brave Women, and it's got a pirate theme. It even comes with, it looks like handcuffs, but whatever. It's a Brave Women, something about brave women rarely remain silent or something like that. I'm butchering the wording on it, but that's basically what it says. The next one I was thinking of doing is, it's called Celtic Dragon. And it's a Celtic dragon. So I haven't figured out which color I'm going to do it in yet. Certainly not red. I don't like red. Some type of green. I got to find the right color green and the right color fabric. So anyway, that was Celtic Dragon. It's pretty. It's a nice looking. It's a nice looking piece of stitchery. Anyway, the last one that I'm thinking about doing, I was actually looking for. I was just looking for something, and I stumbled upon this one. And this one I really like, but I like the other 2 as well. This one's Louis Armstrong, and it's basically him playing the, as you can see, him playing his trumpet, and his cheeks are all puffed out because he did that all his life. So I'm trying to decide which one of those 3 I would go ahead and do. And if you'd like, you can vote on it. You could say number 1 is Brave Women, number 2 is Celtic Dragon, and number 3 is Louis Armstrong. And just by the way, in the Chinese New Year, I'm a dragon. At least I was. Maybe they changed it. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, just leave a number 1, 2, or 3, or write the name in your comments. I'll be checking for votes up until like about April 14th or so. And whichever one wins, whichever one literally gets the most votes, I can't vote. I'm barred from voting because I'm biased. But at any rate,
can I vote?
No.
No. How rude.
Of course you can vote. I encourage everyone to vote. It's your right as an American. Anyway, so go ahead and choose which one you want me to do, and whichever one gets the most votes, and that's even if it's one more than the rest, that's the one that I'm going to do. Anyway, I got nothing left to say. Oh, wait, I did have one more thing. We talked about a trip we went on, and I took a picture. It's the Wenatchee Valley, which is in the west side of the Washington State. And here's the picture. I used a crystal ball. They call them photo balls. I held that up and took a picture of the valley through the ball, and this is what it looked like. It got a lot of people liked it, so I just figured I'd share it with you. Anyway. That's that, and I got nothing else. I really don't have anything else. So we're just going to go ahead and go back to, what's her name? Amy, that's the one.
Wow.
Anyway, thank you.
Y'all see what I have to put up with. I have one more whip to share with you all, and that is my fancy lady. I'm working on At the Mat by Mirabilia, and I am stitching on 32 count Aztec red linen by Weeks Dye Works. So the last time you saw this, it was a brand new start, but I'd had a really solid start on it where I had stitched in a good chunk of the top part of the arch. There's an arch that just surrounds the woman in the design. So I had stitched a good bit of that top section of the arch. And I had actually started stitching on the woman, so I had stitched all of her hair, had stitched her face. and had started doing the beading and did her like kind of, she's got this big fancy headdress with a feather hanging or kind of looping up over her head. So I had stitched that. So this is where she is right now. Woo. Okay. So you can see that I've worked on this side of this kind of arch that's around her and done a fair bit of progress there. I'm working on this little pink tassel over here now. I also filled in all of her beaded headdress, which there's a lot of beads. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I've put in a little bit more of the bodice of her dress, and then stitched quite a bit of the skin that's 1/1. You can still see I have plenty to go, but carried her neck down, so she has a full neck now. And then I've stitched over here into her shoulder. This one I didn't make as much progress on this. It's actually been a bit of a slog to work on this over the past week. So, and that's for a couple of reasons. One of those is I wasn't stitching as long every night as I normally would. So just not as much time. But during the time I was stitching on her, this piece is really bead heavy. And I enjoy beading, but one of the things that's challenging when you're stitching a piece that has beads, 32 count, unless you're stitching with delicate beads, which are smaller, but your average mill hill bead, which is what Mirabilias call for, 32 count is like the top of the, like as high of a count as you can realistically go and still do your beading. 28 count is really more appropriate. And on 32 count, when you have heavy clusters of beads where you have long columns or rows of lots of beads, they're just a little bit too big for the squares. And so what ends up happening is you get a lot of crowding, and eventually if you have a long enough row or column or enough crowding, you get you actually can't there's no space to put the bead where it's supposed to go because another bead is overlapping with that space. And so you take that and factor in that I'm stitching this on a hand-dyed piece of linen, which we know most hand-dyed linens shrink a little bit in that hand-dyeing process. And it was a bit of a challenge to get that big cluster of beads that make up her headdress into place. I actually had to leave out one or two that were called for because there just wasn't enough space for them. And so as much as I enjoy beading, it was a little bit tedious because I was finding myself having to kind of move things around and make adjustments and trying to make things fit and straighten out rows to make sure it looked nice. And so it just kind of slowed me down. It made it a little less enjoyable. The other thing that's a real factor here is I am doing her skin 1/1. And I should mention I am doing a color conversion on her. She's charted as a white woman, and I've chosen to make her an African American woman. And I am stitching her skin 1/1. And I usually stitch skin 1/1 for my fancy ladies. But in this case, it has, in the past when I've done that, it's almost always just the woman, the face in profile and maybe a little bit, the face, the neck, and maybe a little bit of like an upper chest or neck area. But in this case, this woman has, she's got the face, the neck, but she's got a very open, bare shoulders, bare arms, and there's a ton of skin to stitch for this woman. And what that means is that there's a ton of 1/1 stitching to do for her. And so it's a really slow and tedious process. The other thing that slows me down is I'm being really thoughtful and careful about how I'm adjusting those stitches. So when you switch from stitching 2/2 to 1/1 on skin, you have to kind of, you have to be more thoughtful about the blending. You can't just stitch it as charted. You actually have to kind of make some adjustments so that it blends nicely and it doesn't look blocky. And I'm really pleased with how that's actually turning out on her. She doesn't have any areas that look particularly blocky to me, and I'm really pleased with that. But it requires a little bit of extra charting on my part and tracking and being really careful and thoughtful about how and where to make those adjustments. So all of that, it's absolutely worth it in my opinion. I am loving the way her skin is looking. I think she's just gorgeous. I love how everything is blending. It's just a slower process. And so it's been, like I said, just a little bit tedious and not as enjoyable. The good news with this lady is once I finished all of this beading in her headdress, I'm now focusing more on her gown. And her gown really doesn't have any beading, heavy beading until you get to the very bottom of the gown. So it'll move a lot more quickly now that I'm kind of focused here. There's still plenty of skin left to stitch. I'm going to be working on that for a while. But I think I'm going to get a little bit of a break from a lot of the heavy beading that I've been doing. One thing that I did want to share about this piece that kind of gave me a bit of a smile this week as I was stitching her, and I think the reason why I thought of this was because I was finding her skin a bit tedious to work on. And it made me think of my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. She's been gone for almost 20 years now. But she was a very devout woman and a very modest woman. Grandma always had she had her hair up and she had her little prayer cap that she always wore, and her dress was up to the neck, long sleeves, long skirts. I mean, she was very, very modest. And I remember when I was growing up and in high school, I collected antique paper dolls. I've always loved historical fashion, so that shouldn't come as any surprise with all the beautiful mirabilias with the big gowns that I love to stitch. I just love those kind of clothes. And so I loved my antique paper dolls. But Grandma would look at them, and she would always look at the ladies in their ball gowns with, their necks and shoulders and arms showing, and she would just very sweetly say, dear, you could take a marker and you could cover that up, so she would be modest. And I said, yes, I know, Grandma. And then I would never do it because I was like, I don't want to ruin the look of this beautiful gown by markering it up to make sure this woman is modest by Grandma's standards. So anyway, I was thinking about that this week as I was stitching her and all of her skin that is showing. And I was kind of privately thinking to myself, I kind of wish this lady was a little bit more modest because then I wouldn't have so much 1/1 stitching to do. Anyway, really enjoying how this is coming on, and looking forward to making more progress on her. All right, we're going to wrap up here. We have one question to answer, and then we'll just wrap up by talking about what we're going to be working on until the next time we come to visit you. So we got a question from SharJ57, and she asked, what time of day do you like to stitch? Do you stitch a couple of days a week or just on the weekend? So Charlotte, and I actually already answered her question directly. I replied to it, but I thought some of you might be interested as well. So I stitch, it's pretty rare for me to have a day when I don't stitch at all. I usually, depending on how busy we are and how late I work and when we get done with dinner and all of that stuff, I'll usually stitch for 3. If I'm really lucky, I'll get 4 hours of stitching in the evening. That's pretty rare. But usually I get about 3 solid hours of stitching at night, and then I'll get a few extra hours on top of that on the weekend, depending on what kind of plans we have and chores and errands and all of that. So yes, I basically stitch every single day. Gary, I don't know if you want to weigh in on your stitching times or whatnot.
I stitch when I can. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes not a week. Or none, I guess is the way to put that. I'm not, I do other stuff too, so I do like cross stitching, but it's not every day for me. Hopefully, if I'm lucky, maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
All right, so what we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be pulling out my seasonal design, which is nice snowflakes, and looking forward to spending some time on that. I do get to have one more day on At the Met, so I'll see how much progress I can make on that today. I will also be working on my wildcard design, which is Bush Market by Hannah's Needlecraft. I don't think I'm going to have enough time to get that finished, but the next time you see it, it should be really close to a finish. And I will also be working on my weekend stitch, which is Butterfly Port Mauve. Gary, as you know, is going to continue working on Captain America and on Human Beings. And we're looking forward to hearing what all of you guys should think, what all of you guys think he should start for his next design. So I think that kind of wraps it up for us today. We hope that you are all doing well. We hope that whether you're heading into autumn or into spring, you're enjoying the change of the seasons, and that you are enjoying all of your stitching. Hey everybody, just a quick addendum to the video because I completely forgot. Just wanted to say, if you want to contact me between videos, there's a couple ways to do that. You can reach me at globetrottingstitcher@gmail.com, or you can follow my progress on Instagram, where I am globetrotting_stitcher. If you liked our video, we hope you'll give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. And of course, we really love interacting with you through the comments. We read every single comment and try to make sure we respond to all of them, even if it takes a couple of weeks to circle back to you. So I think that covers everything. Oh, you can hit the little bell if you want to get a notification when we post a new video. I've heard that folks are not consistently, that YouTube might be changing their algorithm, and so sometimes folks are having some problems recently with their subscription feeds. So I'd encourage you to hit the bell if you enjoy our videos as well, so that you don't miss any updates from us. So yeah, with that, happy stitching. Bye-bye.